Jake, I'm really worried about the PlayStation 6.
Peter, I think you should be worried about getting some smooches.
A critical error is an error which the OS cannot reasonably ignore. Jake Steinberg is a streamer, writer, and certified yapper. Complimentary. Peter Hunt Szpytek is a YouTuber, journalist, and certified yapper. Derogatory. These are the things they cannot reasonably ignore.
I see this fear, this anxiety expressed all over the internet. It is rumored that the PlayStation 6 will be released next year in 2027.
Jake,
we can't. We still have so
Jake,
much that we could accomplish in the Generation 9 consoles. We can't move on to the next generation this soon. What is going on with this anxiety that so many people feel in the gaming space? I feel like even the listener right now at the beginning of this episode is like, Jake, I agree with that sentiment. I don't want us to go to the next generation yet. It's too soon. Where does this come from?
Money, right?
Money.
I mean, like, I think a lot of the anxiety comes from the fear of the increasing price of hardware, right? We've seen over the last year everything. I mean, every one of the major sort of consoles has had at least one price increase, and then now here is, what is it called, the Steam Machine, and the base model of that is what, $1,200, or it's over $1,000 at least, I know. And so I think that people are freaked out about that, because if they want to stay current, if they want to stay on top of all of the latest and greatest games on the PlayStation and the Xbox, there's not gonna be another Xbox by the way, guys, but if everyone wants to play to have the PlayStation 6, it's like, where am I gonna find $1,000, $1,200?
Yeah,
I think it's a fair fear, but
fear.
Bring back fear.
Bring back fear.
Where did fear go? What happened to Alma? That was a poll, by the way. I cannot believe I just had Alma in my ready to go.
You simply adopted the contemporary console marketplace. I was born in it, molded by it. I want to talk about this fear thing really quick, because I do think that there's a genuine fear and anxiety around expensive consoles. We, of course, saw that this past week with the reveal of the Steam Deck being in its base version, like $1,050, an amount that I think even Valve themselves seems to think they're
a
not
little sheepish.
Worth.
Yeah, they're like, I'm sorry.
So I kind of want to hone in on this, because I do think that I want to get to the bottom of kind of like what this fear and anxiety is before we go any further, because I think it's more than just product is expensive, I would rather pay less for a product than pay more for it, because that's kind of how we represent these conversations, right? When a Nintendo Switch 2 game is $80, we go, oh, that's bad because I would rather pay less for it, which, yeah, we would rather pay less for anything than pay more. And I guess to me, what I'm sensing now when I see this conversation pop up is this particular brand of anxiety that what I have identified is, I think people in our space, hardcore gamers, have largely resigned themselves to paying whatever the cost of a PS6 is. And there's this internal dissonance, this pain of knowing you have signed up to pay whatever it is, so that when they reveal that it's $1,000, $1,100, $1,200, it feels worse and worse, because you know whatever that number is, it's gone.
Because it's that thing like that we've seen over and over again. We could talk about this a little bit, I think, in our bonus episode from last week at patreon.com/criticalerror. You can join for $5 and get that bonus episode, and all the bonus episodes for that matter. But this idea of like complaining about a thing and then sort of maybe turning around and still going like, yeah, but I am still going to buy it. Right. And I think that's how a lot of people feel with these the increasing price of hardware. Right. The PlayStation 6 is going to be $1,100, maybe $1,000, $900, something ridiculous, certainly. But people are still going to buy it because they're like, well, I have to. And I think that's what the anxiety is. And that's what the fear is, that there's this feeling of like, well, I absolutely must. And we've seen this. I mean, even with the way that people are talking about the Steam Machine. Is it called the Steam Machine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
With the Steam Machine, it's like everyone has been like groaning and moaning, waiting for them to reveal what the price is. And now that they have, it has just sort of been like, well, shit, I guess now I got to find $1,000 to have this thing. And I might posit you don't need it, but
I think that like the question of value is really like an interesting one because it comes up in games a lot, because so much of our gaming landscape is interested in this existential question of, is it worth your money, which is like an impossible thing to say for everyone, you know, and we know that we don't need to retread this ground of $1 to you versus $1 to me. Right. Who could possibly say, like, we don't need to, you know. And it's funny because you see this in the micro with something like the Star Fox remake that's coming out this week, where people say, is it really worth $50 for a game that's a remake, yada, yada, yada. And then now you see it with something as high end as the Steam Machine. And here's a question for the audience. How much did you pay for your Nintendo Switch 2? $450, $500, right? Depending on which one you got. Do you feel, honestly, that the value of that system is in perfect alignment with the price you paid for it? And I think that this is maybe a more interesting question to me than it might appear on the surface, because I would tell you, Peter, that I actually get more value out of my Switch 2 over time than that $500 accounts for. And as the months go on, as I play more games on it, I would say that the value of my Switch 2 has easily far eclipsed that initial $500 price point that I put forward to buy into that.
I tend to feel that way about consoles in general. And this is not referring to the, you know, potential super high price of whatever the next gen stuff is, or the Steam Machine or whatever. Because if I got the Steam Machine for $1,000, would I find that to be worth it over time? Probably not, just given my gaming habits. But I think about like the PlayStation 5. That was $500. Sure. I think I got it at launch. Okay. And I do think that I've gotten that value out of it. I do. I feel the same way about the Switch 2. It's even, you know, younger than the PS5, but I do feel like I've gotten the value out of it. But I'm curious, man. I'm really curious when the PlayStation 6 comes out and it has what, again, I think we're just assuming is going to be a ludicrous price just based on the price of gaming hardware in general, and the way that, you know, OS chips have skyrocketed in price and all of that. All of these people are going to get it for free. Right? These websites are going to get it for free. Influencers are going to get it for free. And then at the end of those reviews, those console reviews, before they come out, there's going to be that question. But is it worth $1,000?
Right.
Is there going to be anyone who says no? I'm curious. Do you think? Because here's what I see. It's going to be like, listen, $1,000 is a high price. But
yes,
when you compare directly to the PlayStation 5 and even the PlayStation 5 Pro, you can see that one is clearly superior. It loads 0.5 seconds faster. It has...
I believe the answer is the PS5 in this scenario, correct? In this particular scenario, comparing the Steam Machine to the PS5, I believe the PS5 easily
it beats it, right?
This. Okay.
Yeah. But when you know the PS6 and they're saying like, is it worth it? I think it's going to be like, well, of course it's expensive, but it is the best console on the market. And it's like, is that really how we're gonna like look at how worth it is?
Can I tell you something about the kind of our valuation of the Steam Machine? You know, first, allow me to, somebody in the Discord, actually a Patreon supporting member, I believe it was Connor Trulev, had posted in the Discord that they had just read one of my favorite novels, The Picture of Dorian Gray. And there's a line in The Picture of Dorian Gray. It's nowadays, people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. And that's how I feel when we talk about this hardware. Yes. We can do this mathematical equation of all of the components. We can imagine an additive cost that we ascribe entirely to the raised cost of components thanks to the AI crisis. And we can kind of like tell you the price of stuff. But when it comes to value, we have a much harder time communicating that, because I think it's an unsafe position to be in. It's one where you have to, as an individual, have a perspective. So to bring this to the Steam Machine, I think the Steam Machine is like a fascinating product, because from a value point of view, I cannot square this circle, truly. Because what I see when I look at the Steam Machine is a product of which the value is almost entirely imagined. It is a machine capable of hooking up to your TV and playing a bunch of games that you probably already have access to, okay? And the value of it is playing them with the comfort and the ease of like a normal video game console,
Yeah.
right? That is the promise of the Steam machine, is that it's not a PC. And here's the thing. If you wanted to put a PC together that was capable of gaming the way that the Steam machine was, that is possible. If you wanted to beam your games over to your TV from your PC, that is also possible. Unlike an emulation handheld like the AYN Thor, which offers a gimmick or a novelty like the dual screens that alters your experience of playing a game. You know, if I wanted to emulate a DS game on my PC, it would be fundamentally different than emulating it on my AYN Thor, correct? Right. So really, I think that the Steam machine's value is kind of that accessibility, let's call it, to the couch experience with these PC games. But the truth is that you could replicate that accessibility if you really wanted to. So I think who this machine appeals to more than anyone else is this person who kind of wants this relationship with PC gaming that doesn't really exist. This, like, I can pretend that it is
trying to create a new relationship, which is fine because you can want that if you want. But then when it comes back to the question of like value, it's like, but is creating that value worth $1,000? I mean,
well, I think what the value that they're chasing is the value of a PlayStation.
right? No, correct.
And
yeah, no, like I hear all of the things that like someone could want, and I go, yeah, no, I know all that, and because I want that, and I have it, and it's my PlayStation 5.
And that's the thing. But then you go, but Jake, all of the games on Steam that are not available on a PlayStation 5. And I go, I hear you, dog. I hear you. I think a lot of those games that are on Steam that are not on PlayStation 5 are not kind of the AAA top of the line. Would you agree that that's an accurate assessment?
Yeah. And it's about like, it's talking about value, right? I love Peak. I love Peak. It's one of my favorite games of last year. I play it all the time with my friends still. Would I feel the same way if it cost me 1,000 United States dollars to play on my couch? No. And it's great. It's great.
Peter,
it's so good. But yeah,
if you said my goal is I want to play Peak and games like Peak on my couch, and the solution that you came up with was I need to buy the $1,000 Steam machine, then I would say you have made a mistake, sir.
Yes.
You have made
well, and you know what's so interesting too is today, as we are recording this, was the day that they announced, hey, Grand Theft Auto 6 costs $80, right? It's $80.
Right.
And the deluxe edition is $100. And a lot of people are upset about this. And
wait, really?
what? That they're upset about it?
Yeah, wait, why?
Because it's more. Because it costs more.
Because it's more.
And I understand. I do understand.
Okay.
I completely understand. Because I am probably not going to buy this game when it comes out at that price point. Just given the fact that $80, you know, plus tax, so now we're close to 90, which is basically just $100. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And for, I mean, is anyone in a good financial place right now? Like a really, really great financial place where they can just drop $100 and have it be like, whatever. Not really, right? So for me, I'm kind of uninterested in playing that. That said, when we talk about value, I think about the fact that like, if Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom costs $80, as you know, Nintendo raised the price on their games, on some of their games last year, would I say it's not worth it for those games? I might not. I might say it is, based on
Mario Kart World launched at $80.
It did. And so the question is like, are those experiences worth $80? And of course, it's up to each individual person to discuss value. But for me, I think about like, if Breath of the Wild was $80 at launch and I played it for $80, I would probably say yes, that was worth it for me. And so like I understand not wanting to pay more. I really, really do. But when we talk about value, I just think it is really interesting that so often value gets just like completely smushed into price. And I understand how there's a relationship there and how it is like a similar sort of conversation. But people play GTA 5 for thousands of hours over the course of 15 years, or I guess 13 years rather. And I understand how that might be daunting, but I also sort of look at it and go, well, I don't know. Is that worth $80 to you? Maybe it is.
And even divesting from the idea of dollars into time spent, right? You can have, surely there exists for someone a 2-hour experience that is worth $100.
I've paid more to go to Six Flags with my wife and had a great time.
A show on Broadway.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes our conversations about gaming are thrown a little bit out of whack when it comes into value, because the truth is that you could maybe like pick apart any person's finances and find that the dollar to value of video games is actually quite good.
And also, like, if you like pulled up my credit card statement and like made me go one by one and say like, Peter, really, I would, it's indefensible, like the things I've spent money on that like for less and for more and whatever. And I also like, I think we've made it clear, but I just want to like restate here that this is not like a defense of the increasing prices, right? We've talked about before and on this episode, and I'm sure talk about again, like we're not sitting here being like, oh, this is good because we understand it and because we understand how value works. That's not what we're saying. It's just more about like people get so hung up on the prices of things and like don't really like ask themselves, at least it seems to me, what it's actually going to give them, what the value that they're getting out of it is.
And I, of course, know that you spent $4,300 on Animal Crossing Amiibo.
I did. And that's serious and real. They're all right here.
They're all back there. Yeah. So I know that that's been causing issues for you in terms of...
I just can't figure out how to balance my life.
I know. It's hard. It's hard. Yeah. But yeah, I do think that as the... So, we like to talk about how people talk about stuff in this gaming space. And I think that because of the more apparent economic pressures of the time that we do live in, we sometimes have this instinct to bring that conversation almost wholesale into games, maybe in an uncritical way. So something that I've observed is that in any piece commenting on cost, I think a trend in games writing as of late is to maybe throw in a graph or two in which the author kind of gets effusively angry at the AI CEO that has driven up the cost of components, that has then resulted in the price of your thing being more expensive than you think it should be. And I do wonder sometimes if this is making a more uncritical consumer by accident. To kind of draw this direct line between, well, the price of the components went up, and as such, as a consumer, that makes the price of the object go up for me. And to think that like there is a fairness in the marketplace, that like there's the true cost, the fair cost that we were getting at the beginning, and now there's the unfair cost
you're saying. Yes.
That is solely the result of this one economic factor.
And that we started at a place that was good to begin with is like, well, yeah.
And there are many societal and economic factors that if we answered them, that crisis actually wouldn't affect us at all. Because if we were in a healthy economy, then there could be a crisis for components and prices could go up, and you and I and the average person would go, well, that's actually not a big deal. But the real issue, I think, is that people, consumers, have less money in their pockets than ever. Yeah. People have heard me talk about this again and again. But I think it is worth restating that if we lived in a society in which we had more money in our pockets, we would be protected from this kind of economic precarity that makes the price of these things going up in the hundreds of dollars not feel as devastating as it actually is. Because the fact of the matter is, it is, I think, a sign of how out of whack our economic situation is that anybody feels any which way about a video game becoming $10 more expensive, a video game console becoming a couple $100 more expensive. That is not that is too small of a difference for us to care about it the way that we do right now. And there's a problem there, and the problem is not just the AI stuff driving up those prices. It's not.
Because it's not good that for me, if I had to choose between Grand Theft Auto, it would be the choice between Grand Theft Auto and like groceries, right? Like that's not a good, the fact that those are the two things that you would have to choose between is the fucked part. And like, yeah, it's not great that it's expensive, but it's like the fact that those are the options. because they're the same price is what the problem is, you know, and yeah, being forced to make a choice like that sucks, but also for me, it's a very obvious choice. It's like, okay, well then I'm just not getting Grand Theft Auto if I have other things I got to pay for. But I don't know. I find the anxiety towards this like impending next gen console to be really fascinating, though, because of course we don't know what the prices are of. I think, can we just say it's just the PlayStation 6? Are we like comfortable saying like, hey, Xbox is just not making a console?
It's just the PlayStation 6. I mean, listen, if there's a next generation Xbox, I'm going to say it's not Microsoft's Xbox anymore.
That feels right. Yes.
Yeah, so let's talk about the PlayStation 6. This is like what the rumors are. So I think it is the most tangible conversation. Yeah. And Peter, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm completely out of my mind. But when we talk about anxiety about the PlayStation 6, do you feel really that if it is so precarious, if it is so hard to sell this console, if there are so few people willing to buy into a next generation console, do you think with all that in mind, Sony PlayStation is going to put out a console that has all of these exclusive games that all of it? Do you get what I'm saying
100%, because this is how I feel about, like, when did they stop doing PS4, PS5 games, right? Like,
they haven't.
But what I'm saying is, like, they did stop. I think it was Spider-Man 2 was like the game where they were like, this is not coming out on the PlayStation 4, and then all of their exclusives since then haven't, for the most part. But I think that they are going to look at how many people buy the PlayStation 6. And they're like, there's 100% going to be fewer of those than the people who bought the PS5 if the price is as high as it's rumored to be.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that they would be very foolish to say, well, we're only going to cater to those people. Might as well just, you know, absolutely shrink our target audiences, because it just doesn't make sense. And so I understand the want to get the next biggest thing, whatever, because of course it'll look better, I'm sure. But like, it probably in imperceptible ways, first of all. And second of all, I just think like it would be really foolish if Sony just fully stopped supporting its consoles. I mean,
let's be clear. The PlayStation 6 is a PlayStation. It's going to be a PlayStation 5 Pro with different branding. Yes. Like these machines are not going to be fundamentally different in a way that, like, I think maybe part of what's going on here with the anxiety about the next generation is that people are maybe psychically captured by how console generations had been years ago, how there is like this
a real step that was like, oh well, the PlayStation 1 to the PlayStation 2 is like, you're not even gonna fucking believe this, right?
Right.
But yeah, 100%.
And I would even say that a lot of like hardcore video games people would say that something that they want out of a new generation is to feel like
that step,
a extremely perceptible, this one's over, this one begins, which I think is out of touch with how video games are nowadays. Something I see talked about a lot with the Nintendo Switch 2 is like, oh, it just feels like the sequel to the Nintendo Switch. And I'm like,
yeah, it's what it is now. That's what
you know, and I think to kind of want a more material demarcation is maybe to want like a thing that gamers will also tell you that they don't want, which is like some kind of gimmick.
Yeah.
Now here's the other thing about the rumor with the PlayStation 6 is that it will feature some kind of Switch-like functionality. Maybe there is a handheld. So, but again, I think in terms of the value proposition and what people are so afraid of is, are you now afraid of being left in the dust of being able to play your games not on the TV? Is that what you're afraid of?
You know what it also might be? Because it's like, there's been the rumor that, there's maybe a handheld component to it, or maybe that there's two models, that there's like the main beefy, this is the PlayStation 6, and then maybe there's the PlayStation 6B, right? That's like cheaper, more affordable, whatever.
I actually kind of like that name.
PlayStation 6B.
I think that's kind of cute, actually.
Sony? That'll be $8,000 if you want to use it.
Because I think that the instinct is to do PlayStation 6P.
Oh, sure.
PlayStation 6 Portable. Yeah. But turning the P upside down and making it a B, there's something about that.
That's cute.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So like, okay, let's say they launch one at $400 and they launch one at $1,000, and it's just the difference between these two things. I still think that anxiety exists because I think that people don't like to buy what they view as an inferior product because they have to.
Oh, sure.
So
of
like,
course.
Even if it's like I can only afford the PlayStation 6B, but you have the PlayStation 6 that you can play on your TV, or that it's like the best whatever. I don't know what the difference would be.
The alpha versus
right.
the beta.
Is I think I'm still feeling the anxiety because I'm like, well, I had to settle on the shitty one, you know, like the shitty one,
Right.
even though it's like the brand new console, whatever.
That's okay. I actually think that this is kind of interesting because to me, what this points to is this maybe fundamental, like, heart and mind understanding of video games as something that nowadays, and this was not the case before, but now more than ever, are scalable, right? So you have a version of a game running on the PS5 Pro, and then you have the same version of that game running on the Switch 2, or like a different version of that same game, rather. And because video game consoles have kind of coalesced into this PC architecture and they are so similar, games now are made in a way where it's like, well, we want to be able to support the highest end of PCs, but we also want to be able to support the Steam Deck or even the Switch 2. So you have these lighter weight versions of games running. And it's what you said. It's that anxiety over knowing that there is a better version of the game out there. And I almost feel like we need to go through a gamer re-education camp.
Yeah.
And like about like how important that those like performance and fidelity things are. And I almost wonder if the Switch 2 could serve as a tool. Like I force some people to play,
like play Pragmata on there.
Yeah, exactly. Force people to play these games on Switch 2 and realize that they're not missing as much as they think they are.
I think this actually happened with a friend of mine. He played, he got that Resident Evil pack where it's 7, 8, 9 all like on the Switch, and it was for like what, like $80, which is like awesome.
Yeah.
And you know what's so funny though? I'm so sorry not to interrupt my own story here, but like $80 or maybe it was $90, let's say, for those 3 games we view as like, well, that's for sure 100% worth it. But we're talking about, again, back to the value of like Grand Theft Auto 6, which is, if you played, would certainly last you much, much longer than those 3 Resident Evil games, which are like 6 to 10 hours each. I don't know. It's just something, maybe there's something there. Anyway, but he played it on, he was like, I'm making a concession, but it's for the deal. And he played it and he had a great time. And it's like, of course he did. Because it's the Switch 2 is great, first of all. But second of all, I think good games hold up regardless of how you play them. Regardless of how clean the fidelity is, of how crisp those visuals are, how fast the loading times are. And it's like, of course, there's things that you are not going to want to put up with if they are bad enough. But at the end of the day, you got to play the game and the game was good. So,
hell yeah. And it's funny too. I think that like the knowledge and appreciation of how scalable these games are should serve as a kind of salve for the anxiety that gamers feel. Because if you can be assured that you are going to be able to play these games, surely so many of you have already made your peace with having a PlayStation 5 as opposed to a PlayStation 5 Pro.
Right.
That if you've made that piece, I think you can make the same piece with the PS6. And then here's the thing. If you can't make that piece, if you say to yourself, I just feel too bad about what I'm missing out on, then I hate to tell you this, but I think that the PlayStation 6 might be worth it to you. So like, which one is it?
It turns into the value again, right? And it's like, oh, well, then sounds like if you can't make your peace with that, if you're not okay with that, then yeah, it's worth it. You defined that that's what the worth is. And I understand then being, you know, still irritated that, hey, $1,000 or whatever it would cost is still a lot of money.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you have decided that that is worth it at the end of the day.
Right. I don't know.
I think there's something to that. I do. I really do.
Yeah. I guess like, is there any hope for the future?
No.
Oh,
sorry. What's that?
Okay.
I'm kidding.
No,
I do believe
you're
there's hope
right.
for the
You're right.
future.
So I guess like something that I guess I just want to make clear to the listener is that I am not trying to strike out and say anytime that somebody talks about value in their written pieces or whatever, it is for naught. Because I think ultimately something that I think maybe I could do a better job of acknowledging in my criticism is that a lot of websites or whatever have material needs, and you need to talk about what is on people's minds, and you need to do whatever it takes to get people on that landing page, right? And ultimately, if you are serving the needs, the material needs of your job by just kind of expressing economic anxiety, I think that that is fine at the end of the day. I think that my call to action would be, I think we can maybe be more well-rounded in our assessment of that economic anxiety, rather than just kind of placing it at the feet of how dare Nintendo make this game $10 more or $10 less than I wanted it to be? How dare this company make this price this? And then I think there is a worthwhile conversation to have about how we do this in reviews. I mean, hardware reviews are already so weird, man. So weird. We're reviewing these things the same way that you would review a washing machine. Right. And then there's this, and maybe the listener doesn't know what I mean when I say that, right? I think if you imagine going to a website and looking up a review for a toaster or a washing machine or something like that, an appliance, what you can do in that situation, because it is not a storytelling medium, because it is not an artistic medium, because it is an objective medium, is that you can create a chart where you say, here is the washing machine that is $100 more expensive. Here is the one that is $100 less expensive. And you see,
here's what you get.
Oh, the feature list and what it does objectively. There is no question of this. So there is a degree to which I think we try to do this with our video game hardware as well. You line up the components, you put everything next to each other. It's capable of 4K output at this, blah, 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 blah. But is that the entire story of the value of that device? No.
Right.
And why is that? Because people will be using it differently, because everybody will have a different relationship to it. Whereas I think my relationship with my washing machine is probably very similar to the relationship you have with your washing machine. Okay, so it does kind of, there is a part of me that sometimes feels talking about the price at all in some of these reviews is a little odd.
For hardware?
But then I have to be realistic.
Okay.
Yes. But then I have to be realistic. And I have to say, but there needs to be that kind of review.
Yeah.
It needs to exist. Not every hardware review needs to be that, but I think some of these hardware reviews should maybe recognize that they are reviewing a washing machine and just do that and just review it like that. And then it's easy.
It's interesting because you sort of like, you know, we've talked about how like, on this show a lot, we talk about how there is that intersection and conflict between talking about games as products and talking about them as works of art in reviews, and how that intersection is very strange. And the fact that that intersection still exists in so many reviews makes them feel like this very odd sort of conflict between how we are like quantifying these things. But then when it comes to consoles, I think we have just like fully, for me, like careened into this is a product review, because and that's what I look for out of a console review. And obviously people want different things, but like for me, I am looking for that price discussion. And because I'm curious about like, how does this measure up to something of a similar price or things that we've had in the past? Because I think it does sort of, it tells me something, but I get frustrated with the way that these things talk about price and value, with these reviews talk about price and value, because for the most part they are purchased, they are given to them, right? And that's not like a huge critique of like the people for accepting and talking about it, but it is a critique of maybe the industry, right? How can someone who, if I was gifted a PlayStation 5 Pro, how could I possibly talk about its value? Because it didn't cost me anything. There was no cost, so where's the value, right? And I know these aren't new conversations, but it is frustrating as we're sitting on the eve almost of these new consoles. Yeah, you're gonna say something.
I like this point a lot, because imagine an era. I
didn't buy it, so there's no cost, so there's no value.
This used to be the case. Somebody in the Critical Error audience made this point to me recently, that there was a time when they were working in games media and the hardware for review would be a lend, not a give. And imagine now asking the reviewer, hey, you've had a week with this hardware, you're giving it back, are you going to buy one? That's kind of an interesting question all of a sudden, right?
It is.
I actually find that to be a far more compelling question than maybe like any other framing that one could come across. Because then like you really know what you're missing out on, and you know whether or not that experience for you is
that's
worth
like literally
that
the
number.
value of it. It's literally that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, you know, because I feel that way. Very, very lucky, of course, to work the job I work, and we get codes for free. And
Sure, we do. Yeah, right.
something that happens a lot in conversations you and I have had, maybe on the pod, maybe not, but is the whole like, well, I would play this if they gave it to me for free. Which is how I feel about anything, for the most, like really anything. I would try it if I got it for free, of course, but it does change that value then, because like something like that 007 game, even when I was liking it before it took the turn that it did for me, I was never at a point where I was like, yeah, I would have paid full price for this. Even though I was enjoying it. And so it makes it difficult to talk about then with other people.
Me too.
Because you're like, it's just, I didn't pay for it. And so my relationship with it is fundamentally different. But then, yeah, if you asked me to pay for it, I would say, no, I will not. And so then I think that answers the question, right?
It does. And I almost feel that, like, I guess I'd be curious to know from the listener who is outside of it, who is the consumer. I would be curious to know if the value of that question hits you the way it hits me. Is that something that you would be interested in seeing? This kind of like, okay, I'm putting the review unit aside. Would I use this amount of my own money to
like, it's so crazy. I would put that in, maybe, I don't know who you're talking about who did this, you know, in our audience, but like, I would just do that in the review, right? Have that be your hook of for your website, for your hardware review.
I believe it was Critical Error patron Mitch Dyer, who used to work in games media, that brought that up to me about them being lended before, which I had not even considered. So it was good data to have that was the case at some point.
I will say I reviewed a projector for a website once, and they made me send it back.
Good.
And that was like yeah, I mean, it's like, I get it, you know, they're expensive, whatever, but that really did color the review experience, because it was like, would you buy this? I'm like, well, it's $3,000, so there was no reality in which I would buy this. But and then at that point, I think it gets even more tricky, right? About I was reviewing something that I was kind of out of my depth on.
I guess I'm just compelled by this question of, did you experience something that you now fundamentally are like, I
will not be able to live without this.
I can't live without this. I guess that just like titillates me in a way that I'm curious if it hits other people that way. I find that to be such a funny, like, supposition. Yeah. And then there are some things where like, I'm gonna out myself as like a bit of a weirdo to our listeners.
Go ahead.
So like I'm receiving like a code for Star Fox, from Nintendo. So I'm not paying for that game. I have also pre-ordered a physical copy of that game because I want it.
That is strange.
So I want it, Peter. I want it. Is that so wrong?
No, certainly not. No. Because also I think, hey, thanks for the code, Nintendo or whatever. But I also think that there is something to the idea of like, but I want this because I want to have it as a part of like a collection, you know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I understand, because it is, I think that would be, if you tried to explain that to anyone outside of the industry, I think anyone outside of anyone who plays games, I think it would be an insane thing to try and like explain. But
would you allow me to cushion my reasoning for just one moment? Okay, I do tell myself that with 2 copies of the game, I can now give a copy to my older brother, and we can play together online.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, give him that physical copy.
It's not that's. Oh no, Peter, no. The digital, I keep the physical copy.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. The digital, you know about Switch 2 virtual cards.
Oh, I do know this. Yes, and how that.
Yeah, you just press a little button. It shows up on somebody, and that's right. An extremely valuable function of the Nintendo Switch 2, the virtual cards.
It's actually really good, and it's like they have it for like 2 weeks, and it goes back. Right, it's cool.
And then the whole thing, it's delightful. And if you have your Switch profile on somebody else's Switch as well, because I go back and forth between my brother and me's house all the time when we play together, I can just, from my house, send it to that Switch 2, and then go over and we're playing it there. There is no time limit.
It's awesome.
It's awesome. Cool. Not enough love. You know what it is? There's just a high enough barrier to understanding how it works.
You know, it's funny too, in all of the Switch 2 reviews and stuff like that, and you know, we're talking about like hardware reviews and whatnot, is I think that the Switch 2 actually doesn't get enough credit for sort of what it's doing under the hood with this sort of thing. Do you remember when they did the reveal of the Switch 2, and then like the second time they showed it off, the first like 35 minutes of a 50-minute presentation or whatever, like a significant portion of it was devoted to these sorts of things. And a lot of people were like, boring, no games, it's not about the games. And then in retrospect, it's like, no, they were showing off like what's really actually cool and unique about this hardware that like no other console is doing. Like no other, like, you know, the PlayStation 5 doesn't do this, the Xbox doesn't do this, the Switch 1 didn't do this. I don't know. I think there's something to that, and it's kind of often overlooked in my opinion.
Okay. Before we kind of transition into the back of this podcast, since we've gotten on this topic, shout out. I'm sick of everybody talking about game chat and going, oh, but the frame rate of my friends' games, this little size of the screen. I'm sick of these complaints because, Peter, this is just party chat the way that it exists on every other console with a little bonus.
Yeah.
But you could completely remove that and just have a normal screen and just participate in party chat. Why does the Switch 2's game chat get so unfairly maligned for doing exactly what the other consoles are doing, but more?
It's just so funny too, the idea of like, but the frame rate on my friend's game that I'm not playing is bad.
That I think really shows you how captured we are by those things, right?
Like we are like
by the concept of frame rate is so powerful.
It's not, because it's not even like there's no context in which apparently frame rate could be ever understood as anything other than, but the number's low, because like regardless of what it is doing and why they're doing it, it's like, yeah, but it's only 15 frames a second on a game I'm not playing, and like it doesn't.
Low frames are bad.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like so mega
That's
doesn't
awesome.
matter.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Can we thank our patrons
Where from where?
from patreon.com/criticalerror?
Yes, of course. I would love to thank the members of the Critical Error Nation. These are people, again, at patreon.com/criticalerror. People who are subscribed at the $5 level. They're getting those bonus pods. Today was a good bonus pod. We talked about a lot of games today.
Yeah, I actually think that when we talk about thanking the Critical Error Nation, really we thank them every week in the form of that bonus pod. But what a fun discussion to have about Fortnite, about we played that Star Wars racing game at Summer Game Fest, so we talk about that. What else we talk about today?
What did we start with? You had a game that you wanted to talk about.
I just wanted to talk about my my green Switch 2 that I like a lot. Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit, but this was one of those bonus podcasts that I feel like we were like moving a mile.
We covered a lot of ground.
So much to covered a lot of ground. It's always a fun feeling.
Yeah. So that's patreon.com/criticalerror. That is for our $5 and up members. Thanking the nation, however, would not be complete if we did not give a very special shout out to the members of the Jake and Peter tier. These are the people at the very top of our Patreon. These are Andrew Bolkar, Evan Snee, Mitch Dyer, mentioned earlier as well, and Robert Quesada. Thank you so much for supporting us financially. We talk about it all the time. The reason we were able to do all that Summer Game Fest stuff was because of the support of the nation. It really, really, really means a lot to us. And also, here's the thing. Here's the other part about being a part of the nation. Next week, it's Critical Error summer break. Jake and I aren't around. We're on vacation. So we can't do a main episode. But do you think there's anything on the planet Earth? Anything that's on the planet Earth that's going to stop us from doing a bonus pod for the patrons? Not a fucking chance. Be real. Come on.
And we've already made plans for some things that we want to do and talk about on the bonus pod for next week, and I think it's gonna be a really fun one. And we're for sure gonna talk about Star Fox.
Yes.
So if you're interested in Star Fox, you're gonna want to check out this bonus podcast. But also for the members of Critical Error Royalty, we've got to play the sound that we play to thank them every week. And I think that this one is going to be expressed through the pain and anxiety of having to pay a high cost for a console.
Yeah, that's fair.
Play the sound. Oh, thank you. Thank you to the members of Critical Error Royalty and above. Andrew Bolkar, Ansel Trade, Evan Sneemich, Dyer, Mayra, Robert K. Sada, Connor, True Love, Danny Disaster, James Pierre Reed, Jacob Richter, Jared Kuzino, Cold Ramen, Greg, Cole, Kale Chow, Shin, Pinky Oats, Thick Dick, Mystic, Alex Sims, Non-Existent, Mergley, Josh Day, Robotzi, Jetson Plays Games, Barrett, Courtney, Marty Hess. Thank you so much. Patreon.com/critical error. Peter, I got a little bit of a conversation starter for you for this week's pre-written piece. Do you mind if I take it away?
That's great because I'm going to be on vacation having all sorts of conversations. So please.
Good. Okay. Dear listener, I have a question for you. But before I ask it, I need to try and place us on some common ground. Have you ever heard someone dismiss a Marvel movie because it just didn't really matter? Because in the grand scheme of things, nothing important happened. In the architecture of the cinematic universe, it failed to meaningfully shape the greater context. A story experienced through time becomes an argument about consequence. Have you ever participated in a conversation about Fire Emblem? A similar trajectory here. Three Houses, for example, is frequently criticized because every unit can eventually become anything. What fascinates me about this is the vantage point it requires. To arrive there, one must step outside the 100-hour process of teaching your students, talking to them, nurturing their strengths, compensating for their weaknesses, building affection, making mistakes in battle. One must somehow hold the entire game in their hands at once. You know, Persona 4 Revival got a new trailer at Summer Game Fest. People immediately began comparing screenshots of individual dialogue lines against the original game's Japanese before anyone had played the game, before its scenes had accumulated within us. Before those relationships turned into feelings, a sentence became the object of discussion because a sentence could be isolated, examined, and adjudicated. Even conversations about hardware are touched by this impulse. The moment a console's price is revealed, many people begin constructing an account of value. The machine is a ledger. What matters is not the future experience of ownership, but whether the final balance sheet closes in our favor. I find myself returning to these conversations because they all seem to demand a peculiar feat of perspective. They require us to stand somewhere outside of experience itself. There's a literary critic, Peter Brooks. In Reading for the Plot, he argued that narratives generate desire through anticipation. We seek retrospect. We crave the moment when scattered details reveal a coherent pattern. We just want to understand how everything fits together. There is nothing unusual about that impulse. But what strikes me as strange is how often video game discourse behaves as though that retrospective view is the only one worth having. Games are, I think, unusual objects. Their meaning generated through sequence, through uncertainty and duration. Nobody remembers, though, the first hours of a beloved game because they possessed complete information. They remember them because they didn't. They remember fumbling through systems and mechanics whose significance had not yet revealed themselves. You might remember becoming attached to characters before understanding why. You might remember those rare, delirious hours when a game still possesses the sumptuous mystery of an unopened letter, because what I am describing here is one of the great pleasures available to us as human beings. That singular and unrepeatable instant when a work of art collides with a person at a particular moment in their life and produces something that has never existed before. A reaction inseparable from their memories and desires and wounds and obsessions, a feeling so extravagant and peculiar that no translation audit, no character ranking, no wiki entry, no consensus ever quite manages to capture. That experience is difficult to summarize. It resists rankings. It does not fit neatly into optimization guides or translation audits or franchise timelines, and that is why we spend so little time discussing it. And so, dear reader, I am finally ready to ask you my question. What are you so afraid of? What is so threatening about discussing experience while it is unfolding? Why do we seem so eager to exchange uncertainty for mastery? Why does the conversation keep rushing towards the complete build, the definitive ranking, the final verdict? Because I cannot shake the suspicion that many of the things we love most about games occur before our understanding has stabilized. The student still becoming the soldier. The cast is still becoming a group of friends. The strategy, only instinct. The game still becoming itself. Yet so much of our discourse is impatient with all of that. We behave as though understanding is the highest possible relationship that one can have with a work of art, and I am not convinced that is true. In fact, I suspect that many people are so eager to explain what a game is because they are terrified of admitting what it did to them. And sometimes I wonder whether all this talk of optimization and fidelity and viability and objective quality and canon is just a way of avoiding the far riskier statement at the center of criticism. Here, right here, is what happened to me. Thank you.
Love this. I think this brings up a really sort of interesting thing that I've actually been chewing on lately. I've been rewatching Seinfeld. And I don't know why. I mean, like, I really don't know why. I think most of that, the cast of that show is like, now sits in my mind as like villains in real life. And so there's something kind of like odd and sinister about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But I've been rewatching it, and I had this thought, and it was a thought that was like, I don't think they could make this today. And now it's not because of the way that people usually say that. Like, I saw what's his name from The Office was like, they could never make The Office today. It's too politically incorrect. Yeah. I'm like, nah, that's not what I'm fucking talking about. That stuff's in there, sure. But like, I mean, everyone's like, oh, it's a show about nothing. And you're like, yeah, but it's a show about mundanity. And you could say like, oh, well, none of it matters. And you're like, yeah, but it does, right? Like you were talking about the Marvel thing at the beginning of that, and sort of throw out this idea of like, well, it has to mean something. It has to be this big thing, and it's like, it really doesn't. It really doesn't, because if the only form of meaning that we can get is something moving and it is the destination, then like all we really care about then is the end credits scene in a Marvel movie, let's say, and then you didn't actually care about the movie at all, and so then who cares even about any of it? And so like something like Seinfeld, like watching that is just really interesting because it's like, it's just people just talking about like the super mundane parts of life, but there's something to it that's important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's what you're talking about a little bit.
There is like this, I guess to me, I often see, like, I really like the Persona series.
Yeah. Oh,
and I see people talk about the Persona games and say, well, this one had the better cast, or like rank them that way. And it is this kind of discourse and discussion that I'm so curious about, like, what is it about fandom that makes people talk about things this way? Because the fact of the matter is that when you play the game, you don't have access to the entirety of the cast from the moment you start. You often don't have access to that cast until tens or many more
Sometimes it's
hours.
Like they're adding people to the cast and you have like 10 hours left.
There's like, and people talk about it as if the cast is something that they can remove from the game and judge the experience of playing the game. And I guess I've just really been thinking about this in terms of why this is Fire Emblem Engage, as we talked about on the bonus podcast today. The story is bad, but the gameplay is good. This bird's eye view of talking about games so that you can rank them, so that you see the entirety of what they are, all of their parts, completely divorced from what that ride is, from what the journey is of actually experiencing the game. There's something there that I find like so like boring and immaterial and lacking in meaning, that I think comes from a place of fear. And I think my real question is, which one of these things is the reason why this happens? Is it one, the fandom are the people who spend so much time with the game that the actual experience of playing it gets so far removed from them that they're actually they actually are more familiar with this kind of overview understanding of it. I see the same thing with like Pokemon, for example, where it's like, this game is good because of all of the options you have. And I'm like, but you don't ever make that many choices in any one Pokemon game. So the amount of options that you have is actually meaningless because you only experience that in the retrospect.
Yes.
So it's there's a kind of discussion. I hope I don't sound like a crazy person. I know exactly what I'm talking about.
I totally get it. Because what you just mentioned too, like if you think about like, oh, this ice cream shop is great because of all the options, and you're like, well, that's good.
Yes.
But I ended up with 2, and so the experience of being able to choose is fine. But like at the end of the day, what did I have? Right? Is that kind of where you're at?
What did you have?
Right.
That's exactly it. Yes, that's exactly it.
And a lot of options is great. That's awesome. Like there's nothing wrong with that, and it's good, in fact. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about like, well, what did you have though? It's
I
removed
think
from
like
that a little bit.
Even with something, this is so silly, and I'm sorry to bring this into everything, but even with something like the Star Fox game revealed this week.
Fucking huffing Star Fox gas. I have never met anyone who is like more. I've never heard about Star Fox in my entire life more than I've heard about it in the last like 2.5 weeks from you. I'm sorry, go on.
Because you know what it is? You know what it is truly? I think it's like a preview of how we're gonna handle conversations about Ocarina of Time.
Oh, it is.
And
it is.
yeah.
Yes.
And there is this funny thing that happens when people talk about Star Fox, where it's like, okay, I'm reviewing this game. I have the perspective of knowing that this is a remake. I know in my mind. I know it. And I can't have an experience with this game that does not have this kind of qualifier in it the entire time in a way that holds me back from having I don't know. There's just like something about this tonal distance that we take with games. And this is the other thing. So it's like, is it that people in fandom just spend so long on one thing that distance is understandable? Or is there something about online discussion that values the master, that values the person who has all of this information from the end state of the game, that values seeing all the parts, the lineage of a game? You know what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, I think it's obviously a little bit of both, but in my experience, I would say that the second thing there, the master, the person who knows, the lore person, is like coveted above everyone else. Because when I make videos about like games that have like fandoms that are like really, really, really about the lore, like I made a Bloodborne video like a year and some change ago, and I had to like do a lot of work to make sure like, hey, every single detail in this is correct. Not necessarily because it mattered to what I was talking about, but because I know that if I get a detail wrong, like a single detail wrong, people will look at that and be like, this is irrelevant and not worth watching. And it's like so frustrating. Or I did the same thing with Signalis, which is even like, I think more difficult to understand in terms of like what the A to B to C whatever is. And like I was asking questions on the subreddit and I was getting like berated for asking a question about like an interpretation, and I was like, this is like not a fun way to like engage with this. But it's just because it's like, well, if you get one of these things wrong, people automatically assume, regardless of the context. It's kind of like the frame rate thing we were talking about on the Switch 2 thing, where it's like, we've just decided that lore above all else, and it's regardless of the context that lore is being used in, regardless of if it is important that lore is correct or not, like people just need it, dude.
And this is why I think I'm compelled by this question towards the end of what I wrote of like, what are you so afraid of? And because to be honest with you, when somebody is like reviewing Mario Kart World and they're like, but Mario Kart 8 Deluxe had way more tracks, I'm like, what comes to mind for me is like, what are you so afraid of? Like, what are you so afraid of if you just had to, like, I guess I just like don't believe that anybody is like playing a video game and meaningfully engaging with it and in the back of their mind going, oh, but the last one had so much more content.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't believe it. I find it to be dishonest.
Like, I think you can have that conversation, but I think it needs to move further than just like appraisal. Further than just saying like, well, Mario Kart 8 had more tracks, so that's the superior one. It's because it's got to be more, right? Because obviously, like, they are different games that are accomplishing different things. And so if we are only looking at it, as we were talking about before, as like a toaster review where you're like, well, this one has this, well, this other one has this, like, then we're just not going anywhere with this medium, and we're not going anywhere with criticism and talking about these sorts of things.
And so I do ultimately think it comes down to like a place of fear, because what happens when you default to the most kind of knowledgeable or like most zoomed out perspective, I think when your scope increases that much, I do see it as like a defense mechanism. I see it as something that is harder to argue with and harder to disagree with.
Well, it's impossible to disagree with. Mario Kart 8 has more courses.
Yeah.
You can't.
Right.
But
so I do wonder how many people are knowingly doing this and how many people are maybe unknowingly doing this because they are writing and there is that anxiety of producing something that somebody could disagree with. Whereas I actually think the best writing, the best criticism is when meaning emerges from conversation, and that conversation has to be started with a bold stance that people will disagree with, because the point of writing anything is not for people to agree with you, which I do think is maybe like a larger cultural beat that we found ourselves in. I'm going to bring something in that's crazy right now. Okay. I don't know how much our listenership is familiar with Goodreads.
I'm familiar with Goodreads.
Okay. Book review website. It's a little problematic. It's neither here nor there, but you would be shocked to know maybe that the current cultural beat when you're reviewing a book for the mass audiences is essentially people doing a relatability test. It's people.
Elena, my wife, got off Goodreads for, I mean, this is years ago at this point, maybe 2 years ago, but left because she's like, I can't fucking deal with it anymore. I can't deal with the way people talk on this thing. She uses a different one. I don't remember what it is, but like, yes. So sorry, go on.
No, yeah, but it's just this thing where you find people getting into the reviews and saying, this book is really good because I relate to the main characters, or this book is really bad because I found the main character to be unlikable or disagreeable or impossible for me to relate to, which is maybe not the entirety of where the value of reading lies. And there's just something about this that I think is seeping in to more and more of our entertainment and the way that we regard entertainment than ever before.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of the way that everyone talked about like mixtape, right? Because it felt like you were either in one of two camps. Camp one is I was exactly like these kids when I was in high school, and that makes it good. And then camp two is I was nothing like these kids, and so it's bad. And I think that what's interesting is it's like both of those perspectives I think are fine. But at the end of the day, we're not talking about the game anymore. We're just talking about whether or not you saw this person and was like, yep, this is just how I was. And I think that then you start to get into this big problem of like, well, now we're not talking about it. And we're not doing the work because we're just relying on relatability as the crutch to just sort of like have this conversation when like that can be a part of it, but it needs to go deeper. It needs to go further. Need more. Talk about the characters as they are. I don't know. Remember mixtape?
Maybe one day. No. No, it's gone.
It's done. We're on vacation next week, everyone. Like and subscribe. Patreon.com/criticalerror.
See you next time.